Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Wonderful. We'll wait a couple of more minutes and then get started.
This is my online mobile app. My primary is utilizing.
Is one of the few ways we can encourage people.
How's everybody doing today? Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, good, good, good. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Great, Wendy. Wonderful. Mahina, wonderful. Michelle, Callista, Tammy, great. Okay, just a few more minutes, seconds. This can be recorded and then posted on MyDVH. So if for some reason you have to leave a little early, you can always come back and review the recording. All right, it's 3 o'clock straight up. So let's get started. Just a housekeeping type item. If you would like to speak rather than chat, feel free to do that. Down in the bottom left corner of your screen is a mute button. If you'd like to speak, you just have to unmute and you're good to go. But just so that it's really quiet for the whole group, if you make sure you mute your line right now, and that way we'll not have a problem with any other noises. So if everybody muted? Welcome, Carla. Okay. All right, welcome. So this is a tutorial on pre-internship preparations, basically to review some of the guidelines and strategies for establishing an internship. And so certainly I'll be leading our time, but we've got Jesse Helms here as well, who also works with you. And so Jesse, if you have comments, questions, you want to add anything along the way, just feel free. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. I have a brief PowerPoint just as a place to launch our conversation and kind of give some a framework for our time together. So let me do that so we have that available. All right, can everybody see my screen? Anyone having trouble seeing the screen? It says pre-internship tutorial. And just a moment, I'm trying to get back to the chat. There we go, okay. Okay, great. All right, so the next deadline that's coming up is for fall, which is March 3rd. And so many of you are probably in the process right now of thinking about how you're going to prepare for your fall internship. So a lot of what we'll be discussing today is really in preparation for fall, but the guidelines in general are good for each semester. So just keep that in mind. So if you happen to be someone who's not looking till next spring or the following fall of 19, these should be pretty close to what you'll experience as well. We are at a place now where we don't make a lot of changes from one semester to the next, but if we do make an adjustment, we'll certainly let you know through our announcements. So really our agenda for today is we're going to go through kind of 4 different things. One is beginning the process. That is, begin the process of establishing your internship so you're ready to get started when fall begins. We're going to talk about developing a strategy. There are some general guidelines, and then, of course, as we move into that section, there may be some specifics that are unique to you or your situation. Please feel free to either chat your question or turn on your mic and ask. Another issue is choosing a site liaison preceptor. It's a really important part of the internship development process because these 2 people are people at the site who will be basically walking alongside you through that process. And so we want to be sure that that you understand what their role is and that you can help them to be clear about those roles. And lastly, accessing program support. As already mentioned, Jesse and I are available for questions, need resources, need direction. We are the people to go to, and we're more than happy to help you along the way. Before I continue, I want to just check to kind of get we want to address the questions right now, but I'd like to see if you have specific questions that you need addressed in today's tutorial. If you want to go ahead and chat those, let's do that, and that way we'll have a written record of those questions and we can always come back to them later on. So just jot your questions down. Take a minute to do that. Great. Can the internship be taken in 2 different semesters for management track? Turning my site selection and new site information, is there an approval that occurs? Okay. And then back to the management track. And if it can, is part of the internship allowed to be taken in summer for management track students? Other questions? Okay, feel free to add those as we continue on, and I'll address them as we move through today. The first thing that I wanted to really start off with is this statement: establishing an internship site is part of the learning process. The reason that I want to really be very clear about this is that your efforts to develop an internship site, the process of identifying a site, really studying up on that site, making first contacts, making follow-up contacts, and doing the steps necessary to solidify that site. All of this is a learning process. And so it's an intentional part of your pre-internship phase that is intended to prepare you for when you're ready to go out and get a job after you graduate from the program. So if you've gone through this process while you're in the program, then you have at least one time under your belt before you have to go for a job after the program. So that's why we have you as really the driver of this process. So just keep that in mind. That it's not just a series of hoops to go through or anything like that. It truly is intended to be a learning experience. Okay, so common questions that come up during the pre-internship are these. And we've been collecting these along the way as students ask them from one semester to the next. And so I want to go through these plus the ones that were raised and try to address those right up front before we look at more of the process. So how do I register my intent for the internship? In a moment, I'm going to show you precisely where to go on MyDBH to do that. And this is a critical step, this registering the intent. Because what that does is that when you go through the process of registering your intent, it then notifies Jesse and I so we know that you are intending to start that internship in the fall or in the spring, whenever you choose to do so. Without registering your intent, we have no knowledge of your interest. And so that's a important first step. A question that often arises, my site isn't listed in MyDBH, what do I do? So part of the issue here is that we have students all over the United States, including different countries. And so it isn't possible for us to develop internship sites in every possible state and various cities within each state, let alone the other countries. And so if you don't see a site that you're interested in, it's not listed in MyDBH, that's okay. We have a process set up for you to establish that site. And so we'll be discussing that further, how you go about doing that. What if I need help finding a site? Well, that's the next step, right? You have a site in mind and now you want help to establish that. Or perhaps you really can't think of where you might want to have your internship. And so you need some help with that. And it's not a problem. That's what we're here for. We will help you to establish that site. So one thing that most students do is they will email Jesse and I and ask for some help, and then we'll schedule a call so we can talk about what are your particular interests, where you live, what are some of the opportunities that might be available. One thing that I often ask, two actually things that I often ask students in that situation is, number one, what are your career goals? Because I would like to help you find a site that's as close to what you hope to do in your career or post-graduation. That's where I'd like to start our search. Second thing is that since you are all in some type of practice or management, you already have a network of professionals that you know. So I would probably ask you, who do you know? Let's try to see if we can't connect you with who you know, asking them to make an introduction to someone at a site that they know. So those are two kind of typical guidelines that I use when beginning to help a student find a site. Where do I find the internship paperwork? Again and again, we're going to say today, and you'll get from Jesse and I, if you email us, check MyDBH, and I'll show you exactly how to do that so that you always will find the latest information, and it will give you very clear instructions on what to do next. How do I submit my documents once they're complete? Again, MyDBH, and there are alerts built into MyDBH that tell you when documents have been reviewed or if there are things outstanding, and we'll review that in just a moment. Does ASU have liability coverage for students in internships? And the ASU does, and we have that information available. Usually, students pursue that when the site says you need to provide proof of liability insurance, and then we help you to obtain that through the office on the campus at ASU. How do I enroll in IBC 684 or internship? This one we are asked probably most often every semester. So I want to really answer this very clearly. We enroll you, you don't enroll you. Just keep that in mind. Once you've completed all the tasks for internship, we take the next step of enrolling you once we know that you've done your job and we've obtained the agreement from the site, the legal document that says you can be there. So we'll do that enrollment for you. And lastly, when can I start my internship? And the key here is obviously at the beginning of the semester, but the only way to start is if everything is done. You've taken care of your tasks and we have an agreement in place, then you can start your internship that semester. Those are the two main things that prevent a student from starting an internship. One, they can't get some of the paperwork done for a variety of reasons, not to fault anybody, just some things do arise, and that may prevent a student from starting an internship, so they need to postpone to the next semester. Another is the agreement. Sites that choose to use our standard agreement, they basically fill that out, send it back into us. It's a couple of pages, and it goes right through our process. It can occur in a very short period of time, within a week or two. Sites who would prefer to establish a non-standardized agreement, that is one they have established for their internships that is different from our standard, that can take anywhere from a month to 6 months to put into place. So that has often been something that has prevented a student from starting an internship. And again, it's just a matter of knowing ahead of time that if we're not able to get that agreement in place, to begin steps of taking other courses and postponing your internship for the following semester as we continue to get the agreement worked out. So let me stop before I address the chatted questions and just see if there are any follow-up questions to any of these that I've addressed, because these are really important ones, and that's why we put them up first. I'm not hearing any questions so far. Okay, all right. So let's just look through the list real quickly and see if we can answer some of those. Can the internship be taken in 2 different semesters? You can take the internship in as many semesters as is necessary for you. So, for instance, clinical interns can take internship in fall, spring, or summer. And so some students decide that, taking the internship over 2 semesters isn't quite enough time for them, so they develop a plan to take it over 3 semesters. So they might start in the fall, continue in the spring, and finish up in the summer. Now for management interns, we only offer internship in the fall and in the spring. We don't have any way to oversee management interns during the summer. So if you think that you want to take more than 1 semester for a management internship, then you'd want to begin in the fall and continue on into the spring, and then you're all set. Did I answer? Who's RG? RG PhD?
Yes.
Yeah, did I answer your question okay?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, good. And Tammy, let's see, I've turned in my site selection. Is it an approval? Yes. So as you turn in your site, you select the site, and if the site is not on our list with an active agreement, then yes, it goes through an approval process. The way that you initiate that process is that there's a task in the optional list of tasks in my DBH, and you'll see new site approval form. And so you would complete that, and then what I do is I review that site. So you include a website, so I can go to the web, see what kinds of service they offer. The main thing I'm looking for with a clinical or a management site is that they have both medical and behavioral services provided at the site. And so we're looking at being sure that you have the opportunity to work in an environment during your internship that is, to some extent, trying to work with both medical and behavioral, and hopefully attempting to integrate or move along the continuum of integration, and so that you could be in that kind of an environment and participate with that and help them along with that. Let's see. Carla, you asked, I'm having some issues finding a primary care clinic that can take me, although Texas has huge hospital systems. I find that they will only allow interns from Texas brick and mortar schools. There are certain regions within the country that are a little more difficult than others. Carla, you've identified one area. Another area tends to be in Florida, though it's getting better. The Northeast also, because of all the Ivy Leagues, it tends to be a little more difficult there as well. And then there are some areas of the country that are more rural, like Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, very rural, Wyoming, very rural environments. And so sometimes it's difficult for a student to get a placement there. But we then work toward taking a slightly different approach. All the policies and everything are here too, but we begin looking at different types of sites. We look at what the student has in the way of expertise and skills, and also I'm always available to make a contact if you have made an initial contact and the site says, gosh, we're just not sure what this internship means. For any of you, I'm certainly willing to make those kinds of contacts as well as a follow-up if they request that. So, Carla, what I would suggest, you and I have a conversation more offline, one-on-one, to look at your particular area, and then we will see what kinds of options are available. Wendy, how many hours per week do we spend in the internship? The internship has a range of allowable hours from 8 to 20. So you can't spend any less than 8 in the internship per week, and you can't spend any more than 20. That is, you can't record any less or more, right? So less, obviously, you wouldn't be recording. But the more, if you wanted to work there 30 hours, you could only get credit for 20. But the reason for that is we want to make sure that you get a breadth and depth of experience. And so we want to make sure that we spread it out over the semester. So we can't have someone doing 40, 50 hours a week and get done within just a few weeks. We want to make sure you spend the full time. The reason we have the minimum of 8 hours is because in order for you to get to know the site, for the other team members to get to know you and to get used to working with you, you have to be there enough each week for them to do that. And so that's why the 8 is a minimum. Carla and Wendy, did I cover your questions so far? Okay. And you can chat your responses. Okay, great, Carla. Great. And Wendy? Okay, let's keep looking down the list. Carla, would I be able to go into a specialty clinic like neuro or cancer? Absolutely. Yeah, and so the key would be is that they would just need to be um, open to having a behavioral health provider there working on the team, the medical team. But certainly you can go into any kind of specialty clinic. That would be just fine. And C. Salvatore about Nebraska. Um, please check with me as well. Let's schedule a time to talk about your experience looking for an internship in Nebraska. Mahina, for reverse integration sites, what is the threshold for approval as a new site? Are they they're still in the beginning stages? Okay. So, Mahina, are you management or clinical? Clinical. Okay. And so that's the first question I asked. Now, I'll tell you why, and I'm not just speaking with Mahina, but everyone. If a site is got a low level of integration, but they're moving, they have a plan, they have a series of steps they're trying to carry out in order to move along to a greater level of integration. That's a good site to be in. Because you can have an instrumental effect on that effort. And based on your training here in the program, and so that would be certainly something I would look at seriously. The reason I ask clinical or management is that clinical, because one of the requirements in order to pass the internship is that you have to have 40% of your hours in direct patient care. You'd have to be sure that you're going to be able to get those kind of hours. I wouldn't want you to get to your site only to find out that you weren't able to get your clinical hours. Management, on the other hand, sometimes students have gotten those internships that have been at those early stages of integration, and part of the reason the site was interested in having them on board is because they were asking the student to come on board and actually help them develop the programs necessary to integrate further. So it works out really well for them, and there should be no downside to that because we don't have a minimum like with direct patient care for the clinical folks. We don't have that for the management folks, and so that shouldn't be a problem. Mahina, did I answer your question sufficiently? Okay. Right. And Carla, let's see. Just a minute. Wendy asked, let's see. I'm not sure whether I read all core course and do the internship. Okay. Wendy's good question. We have your course carousel set up so that the internship falls somewhere about the halfway point of your program of study. So there's some balance in how that's placed. On the one hand, we want to make sure you have a good foundation of courses prior to even contacting an internship site. So you have some familiarity with integrated care before you even make that contact. And before you start your internship, so you have some tools to use when you get there. So that's why we have it somewhere in the middle. On the other hand, you may have unique circumstances that are unique to you, and that means that you'd prefer to get some of your coursework out of the way first and would not want to do courses and internship at the same time. Some choose to do that, and I'm not suggesting that you should, and I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't. It really is your choice. I think it's helpful to have the internship somewhere in the middle of your program, because what you learn in practice, you can then come back to the classroom in your final courses and kind of feed back that information, that learning, into your coursework. So there is some value of really trying to have it somewhere midpoint. What I would suggest, if you're considering placing your internship at a different time, that you just take some time and meet with your advisor to really think that through and make sure it's the right choice for you. And that advisor would help you do that. Carla, you asked, can you take all 400 hours in one semester? And based upon what I was describing in terms of 20 hours max per week, it's not possible to get 400 hours. Kelly, so the clinical internship is not allowed to start in the summer. Is that true? That's true. That's true, Kelly. We don't start clinical internships in the summer. You can continue or finish in the summer. You can start in the summer. And the reason for that is that summer is so short. And what we see is that in that first semester, there's kind of a build-up phase of a few weeks where you're just starting to get momentum, seeing patients, meeting people at the site, and everything else. If you do that within the summer, before you know it, the semester's over and you're just getting started. And so that's why we have done away with summer starts. And as I said, you can't do it all in one term. A few more questions. Okay, approvals we'll be getting to in a moment. I'm looking at a facility not listed. Oh, okay. We're going to be talking about how to be prepared for fall 18. Cynthia, management track has 240 hours total. And so 400 hours for clinical, 240 for management. And one semester, that's the typical amount of time that management students complete their internship. Some choose to go on to a second semester, but most finish in one semester. Okay, and we will be talking RGPhD. Who is that? What's the name?
Robin.
Okay, yeah, Robin, we'll be talking about that offline, you and I.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, can an extra internship hours or project replace an elective? And we've not done that, and I'm going to say no for now, but it's an interesting idea. So don't plan on doing that, but I'll certainly bring it up in the faculty meeting to see how others might think about that. Just haven't even thought about it. Okay, good. So we addressed some of the questions that you have, and so let's proceed on here to answer some more of those. The site contact roles. This is really important, and I just left it up there like that just as a reminder so I could pull it up. The site contact roles are really important to know, because that is, what is the site liaison and the preceptor? What are they responsible to do to support you? This is important to keep in mind, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that you get the best support possible. And so if you go to the syllabus, and I'll show you where to find that in my DBH, yeah, on pages 6 and 7, it goes into great detail about each of those two roles. The best way to think of it, the easiest way to think about those two roles is one, the site liaison is an administrative support. They're the person that helps you gather information. They introduce you to people on site. They help you to get the paperwork done, get the agreements in place. They're an administrative support. The preceptor, on the other hand, both clinical and management, is that person with whom you're going to work most closely. So if you're a clinical intern and you're on a medical team, it's that person with a medical degree of some kind in a medical profession. So it could be a MD, a DO, an RN, an NP. They are working on that team when you're there on site. And so you're going to interact with that person a lot. And you'll probably be having conversations with them about your internship project. You're going to be working with them to understand more about the work of the team and how you can offer a consultative role to the members of the team. And so that's the kind of role that person has. The management preceptor is someone who's on the management team, usually in mid-level or upper-level management. And so it could be a CEO, could be a COO, could be a director of operations, whomever. But that person is involved with the management team, and you're operating there, working with them, identifying business case studies, which are based upon their needs and their priorities, and they are discussing with you how to go about conducting those studies and what will be most helpful to the management team in terms of what you produce as a result of your case studies and your management project. So those are the two different roles. One is more administrative, the other is more content or related to your role as either behavioral health practitioner or a management professional. So where do you begin? Always begin with MyDBH. In fact, I can't underscore this enough. I was just going through, in MyDBH, we have a list of all the students. And I was going through and noticing that many students haven't even been to MyDBH, because we can see when you visit. Many students haven't been to MyDBH in weeks and even months. That is a recipe for disaster. And the reason I say it in that way is all the information you're going to get from the program is going to be funneled through MyDBH through announcements. If you have tasks to complete, MyDBH will be the place that will alert you to those tasks. When you submit things, as people have suggested they've submitted things, MyDBH will be the place that will tell you if something needs to be followed up with. And finally, it's in MyDBH where you'll find what we all look for, the green check marks, which means basically it's done. You've done your part, we've done ours to approve, and it's ready to go. Can everyone hear me okay? Someone said the audio is a bit muffled. Any problems
Well,
with sound?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, Kelly, you might put in some earbuds. That might help. As you can you see my pointer? Cool, thank you. Thanks, Carla. Okay, so when you go to MyDBH, on the left side, you're familiar with the left menu. If you click on internship information, it will drop down this list of the various pieces of information for internship. So you can see your syllabus here. If you click here, you'll see clinical and management. Choose the one that's appropriate. If you go to instructions, you'll see the deadlines page. So it tells you exactly what all the deadlines are for pre-internship and setting up your internship. You'll also see a guidelines and strategies document. We're going to look at a little bit more of that in just a moment. But that really gives a four-step process of how to, from beginning by registering your intent all the way to securing the internship site. We have program flyers that are available. So if you want to print out a flyer, if you have a color copier, I'd suggest, or color printer, I'd suggest printing it out in color. So you have something to take with you to a meeting with a prospective site. You might want to know more about the program or know more about the internship. And those flyers are designed both for clinical and management for you to take with you depending on your program. And then there's some other things that are patient outcomes. That's going to be more relevant when you're finally in your internship for those who are clinical students. If you're a continuing student, so in other words, you've done a semester and what you're doing right now is trying to get ready for the next semester, then you'll at that point want to take a look at that item. The last is if you want to see the internship sites, you can select that button. When you do, I'll show you what you see. So as you can see, you'll see all of the sites on the map, and of course it's all over the globe. But if you want to get closer, and you have a particular area you're interested in, if you like to look at things visually, you can scroll in a lot closer and see specific places. When you finally get to below that and look at these, so you can like select one and it'll say what it is. Or you can go through the list. When you see this sign here, this little ribbon, that's an exemplary site. There's another designation, pipeline, a pipe. That's a pipeline site. The exemplary sites and the pipeline sites require an additional approval process. So everything we'll talk about in terms of getting your site set up is all going to be the same beyond the approval, but prior to the approval, exemplary and pipeline sites require an additional approval. So if you choose that site, then what you'll do is you'll select the optional task that is a placement application, and it'll ask you for information that we'll review. And then once we have done the review, we'll have an interview with you. And if we see that you and the site are a good fit, then we'll make the connection. And then you'd carry on like you would with any other site. You'd make the contacts, take care of the paperwork and all of that. So exemplary and pipeline sites. Exemplary is basically those sites that have a very high level of integration. So that's why they're exemplary sites. Pipeline sites are those that have identified, like Arrowhead here in the Valley, that have said to us, we want interns every semester. So we're basically filling the pipeline. But part of our special relationship with a pipeline site is that we want to make sure that we place the right student for that site and that the fit is good, both for the site and for the student. So that's why we have that additional approval process. Questions about any of the menu items or the site? Listen at this point. Okay, so let's, oh, wait, Carla, if there are sites listed but not active Does that mean they once were? Yes. They either once were active or a student began pursuing that and chose to pursue something else. And just they weren't deleted from the list. So you certainly could begin to pursue that site and see if there is an interest there. Definitely. Okay, we go back to our other page. So, so beginning with MyDBH, that's just a critical place to go, and I really want to encourage all of you, go to that site today, MyDBH, and just check it out. If you haven't been there in a while, really go through and look at all this information before you call Jesse or I. Make sure you've reviewed everything so that we know that we can build upon that you've already reviewed and help you with the next steps. So the big question is, well, how do I register my intent? So when you go into MyDBH and you are on your dashboard, this is what the dashboard looks like. I've cut off the top and there's more down below, but you'll see this area. There's a section on tasks. These are the tasks that this person has that are upcoming in April. Here are announcements. These are the most current announcements. And then internship section. So as you can see in this case, the person hasn't started their internship. They have no hours yet. And right there, it says start intent for a new internship. If you click on that and just follow the prompts, you'll start your internship. You just select, if you're looking for fall 18, you select fall 18. And then it'll ask you to select a site. If you don't have a site, you can say, I want to add a new site. And you put the site information down and go. Now, you may ask, well, what site do I put down? So there are two answers to that question. First is, if you know that you're targeting fall, but you're not sure of the site, go ahead and and start your intent and add the site link. So you can do that. If you know the site, then go ahead and fill the information out. That way, you'll be on our list for wanting to start in the fall, and your site will also be listed. It's just basic information. It's the site name, the address, the phone number, and some basic contact information. And if you're not sure who you contact at this point, you can leave that blank for now as well. So that's all you do. Now, let's say you're a clinical student, and you're going to start in the fall. Then that means you're going to continue in the spring, right? So you might as well go ahead, start your intent for fall, do that, come back, start your intent for spring, right? Do it right away. Now, I would leave the site blank for the spring for now, because you don't know that you're going to necessarily start and continue in the fall into the spring at the same site. So until you solidify that site, you've had that conversation with them about continuing the spring, you can wait. But at least you're on our list then that you're going to continue on into the spring, and that's a good idea. So you just do it now, and that way things will prompt you to do the task necessary for spring if you have your intent registered with us. And Robin, yes, you can do that right now. Anytime. No better time than the present. Any question about registering your intent? It's pretty clear. I mean, all this is saying is this is who I'm targeting. Does that mean that you're necessarily going to go there? Not necessarily. It may change, right? You might, in the process of looking at sites, you might choose a different site, and that's okay. At some point, we'll tell you that you have to finally make a decision. But for March 1st deadline, which is our first deadline to register your intent, we simply just want to know that you want to start in the fall, and we want to know the site you're targeting for now. That's all we need to know for March 1st. By April 1st is when we want to know that, yes, I'm definitely pursuing this site, and I'm going to, and then take care of the paperwork for that. Okay, so once you register your intent, then another thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually prepare yourself to approach that site. So, yeah, as I said, under the instructions in the left menu in MyDDH, there's the guidelines and strategies document. And that document has this very graphic. And the sections of that document, so the first section, you'll see a red bar on the left, and the second section an orange, and so on. These are the 4 different steps to meet the deadlines along the way. You're going to want to identify a site. It provides specific instructions for how to identify one, both through the things that I mentioned, looking into your network, identifying those that you know already, identifying areas of interest, ones where you have a real interest in pursuing an experience with them. And it provides a way to begin to prepare yourself for approaching that site. So before you email, before you make a call, before you stop by, it provides specific instructions for how do you learn about that site in advance, so when you go to actually meet with them for the first time, you make the best impression. That is, you clearly are able to communicate to them that you understand who they are, and you understand what kind of services and what their mission and purpose is, and how your interest in joining their team to help them to accomplish those things. Notice that is the primary approach using the site. When you review that document and look at that strategy for the first deadline, the one thing you don't want to do is to communicate to them, I need an internship and I think this might be a good place to get it. Because that doesn't tell them that you know anything about them. It doesn't tell them that they are going to benefit in any way from you being there. It simply says that you have a need and that you want them to fill that. And we don't want to send that kind of message to a site. Sites are much more open and receptive to people who really communicate, hey, I'd like to join your team, and here are some ways, based on my training experience, here's some ways that I might be able to help you. And so, of course, that piques their interest. And secondly, and my internship is designed to do these things, in terms of the kinds of services you provide or the kinds of projects you can conduct, like the business case studies for management students, or the internship project, like a population health management program, group intervention, or the daily activities like providing support for the team, medical team, in providing warm handoffs and other things to address the behavioral issues of their patients. All those things communicate to the site that you come to join them and to help them with what they're already trying to accomplish. And you have the skill in order to do that. Let me ask if there are questions at this point related to that general kind of an approach. And as we wait for possible responses, what I've noticed is that students that are most successful in establishing a site fairly easily are really the ones that have a conversation with the site once they have that first meeting, who really ask lots of questions, really show an interest in getting to know the person they're meeting with and the organization that they represent. And this sends a clear signal that the intern is really interested in learning and exploring and is open to really understanding who they are. So those students tend to do really, really quite well in establishing a site. The other issue on that is that when the person that you're meeting with tells you more about what they do, it gives you perfect opportunities to identify specific things that you could address. So, for instance, let me give you an example with a clinical student. The clinical student is meeting with a site, and in the midst of that, let's say they're meeting with a doctor, and the doctor says, "Yeah, I have these patients that have this particular condition, and I notice that they keep returning back to follow-up visits, still struggling to manage their condition. I've given them all the tools. I've spent time with them. Other members of my team have met with them, and they just still seem to be struggling." Well, that gives you, if you're a clinical student, that gives you a perfect opportunity to say, those are the kinds of patients I'm being trained to work with. I have the skills and the tools necessary to address those types of issues, those behavioral issues that are impacting those patients' ability to manage their condition. See that nice that nice complement, the one that so it's complementary, right? You've got the need, and then you've got the student responding with a way to address that need based upon unique skill set. Management students can do the same thing. I talk with all the sites. Any site you go to, I'm going to be talking with them. And one thing that I notice on the management side is that sites often say, "Gosh, I've got like a director." She'll say, "Gosh, I've got all these projects I've been meaning to work on. I've got all this data we've been collecting. I haven't had a chance to really look at it, but I've got lots of questions I want to answer, and I have lots of ideas about things I'd like to do, but I need to accomplish this first." That's a perfect opportunity for a student, because that's in essence what the business case studies are: is taking a real question or need, and then delving into the data, delving into the organizational processes and procedures and policies, and meeting with the management team and really understanding that particular issue better, and then gathering information and then making recommendations for how that can be addressed. These folks from the organizations who receive a management student really usually express very emphatically they are so excited to have a student come and to do some of these things that are not busy work, substantive work that they know they're going to really value the results of those efforts of that student. So just think in that way, how you can match the need with your skill set, whether you're clinical or management. That's really the mindset I'd like you to be in as you're going through these strategies. Oops, I left one in. The one thing I wanted to leave you with is to return to MyDBH as a reminder. Obviously, I said go to MyDBH, return regularly. My suggestion is go to MyDBH at least 2 to 3 times a week. Even if you just pop in, just see if there's anything that requires your attention. Because if it does, then you can take care of it. At least you know about it, so you can set it up on your list of to-dos to take care of it soon. When you go in and you go into the internship section, this is what you're going to end up seeing. So this pre-intern has these tasks for fall already in place. And it's showing what's not submitted, what's been resubmitted, and what has been submitted and they're going to have to resubmit. Once it's been submitted and approved, it'll say approved instead of submitted. Once you're in your internship, the hours that you clock will be on that on that dashboard as well. So it's just a great place to continue to keep in touch. It'll tell you what you need to do and how you're doing, so you can monitor your progress along the way. Last thing I want to review very briefly, I want to help you to prevent those issues that will prevent you from starting your internship on time. We're noticing some trends, and so if you're aware of these, you can prevent these from occurring, at least to the best of your ability. Some may be out of your control, but to the best of your ability, you can do what you can now. So the delay in the internship start, one is that we can't start an agreement until the ACO request has been submitted. I just showed you the dashboard, and you'll notice the ACO request is one of the tasks. And the reason it's an optional task is if you have a current internship site in our system already, then you wouldn't, and it's already active, you won't need to do that. But every other one, you'll need to do that. So be sure that you take care of that. The extended site training orientation requirements. Sometimes sites have orientation and training they need you to do before you can get started. So maybe they have to teach you on the computers or the policies, or maybe learning how to use the fire extinguishers, or how to get access to and use of the EHR. Make sure you know that in advance. One of the tasks in here is site preparation requirements. That will tell you what the site needs, because they have to answer yes or no for all the types of things they need you to do in advance of starting your internship. So you'll know by that time when you submit that form, that completed form. But just keep on top of those and get those things done as soon as you're able, so that it doesn't delay. Another is make sure you're coordinating you're taking a look at the schedule, because during the winter semester, some students wanted to start like in a university setting, but they couldn't start their internship because that university didn't start till a week after we did. So maybe there's no way around that, but just be aware of it and know in advance that you would have a week delay. More than a week delay is not good, because then you get behind real quick. So in this case, a week is not that big of a deal. But if we look to see more 2-3 weeks, then we'll look at postponing the internship. Another delay occurs when sites have additional specific requirements like background checks and vaccinations and drug tests. Again, that form that you fill out will identify those as well. So just keep your eye out for those things they need in advance. Last thing to do is make sure you're coordinating your schedules. Make sure that your liaison or preceptor rates. Let's move to the second one. Make sure your preceptor is available during the hours that you're there. You don't want to set up your time to be on site when your preceptor isn't there, because that's the person you're supposed to work with most closely. So make sure that they dovetail and that you're there at the same time. This first one, like the liaison or preceptor leaves during internship rotation. This is something that's probably completely out of your control, and I don't know how you'd prevent it. But being aware that it does happen occasionally, not a lot, but occasionally, will help mentally and emotionally prepare for the possibility of having to find another liaison or preceptor in very quick order in order to continue your internship. It happens, and so just be aware of that. It's possible. Last is students selecting the wrong class time, which conflicts with their other obligations. So you'll be a part of a weekly consultation group for internship, and you'll be given options of different times of the week to attend those. You'll choose one of those. Before you choose, and it'll be based upon an email Jesse will send you saying, please choose the section you prefer. Before you make your choice, make sure you're available. So check your work schedule, check your other classes and everything else. So before you let her know and then she schedules you, you've got all that clear. Okay, I hope that this information gives you enough to prepare. I'm sure there'll be other questions that will arise after today, after you've taken a look at all the information. If you go through my DBH, you'll see announcements and emails that you've received. Take a look at all those things, and once you've done all that, let us know if we can help. That's why we're here, and we intend to help you, each step of the way. And so I'm going to wrap things up for now, but if you get off and would like to meet further, just simply email us, either Jesse or I, and ask for a time to meet, and we'll get you scheduled so we can have a conversation, further discuss anything that you have that you need.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, and I'm sorry I went over a few minutes. I kind of rushed toward the end there, but I think we got a lot taken care of. It's good to meet with all you, and you take care. We'll talk to you all soon.